Alright, for this all-on-4 patient, last time we took the preliminary impression, we poured up this model, and now you can see these are 3 temporary cylinders, and I didn't have an extra temporary cylinder, so I just used a open tray impression coping, and then I connected, or my assistant Melissa connected all of them with GC pattern, and then she cut them. Really thin cut at each connection, and we're going to put them in the patient's mouth, re-lute them with some fast set acrylic, and then take our final impression. She also made this tray. She made a little window in this tray so it'll seat right over everything and we can wipe that easily to take the impression. So I'm just pulling off this conversion prosthesis first. I'm just removing the PVS plug at each site. Now I'm going to go ahead and put the jig on each implant. It actually helps if you have a little fine tip Sharpie marker and you label each segment, so that way you don't get them all mixed up. So I have my assistant hand me them one at a time, and I put them just lightly on the implant site at first. I'm just putting them really lightly so that way I can still kind of rotate it so they match up with the adjacent one. So I make sure that it matches up, and that also that it's not touching the adjacent one. So if it's actually touching, it might be binding and not be seated all the way. And so now I have all of them seated all the way. You see that one of them in the back is an impression coping and the 3 other ones are temporary abutments. And so now what you want to do is go to each of those gaps, and I'm just using like a little salt and pepper technique, just dipping it in the liquid and dipping it in the powder, and then just applying the GC pattern at the gaps. So I want to mention something about this that's pretty important. You want to keep that cut in between your GC pattern segments pretty thin, so that way you're only adding a little bit of acrylic and not causing too much shrinkage. And secondly, you want to add enough acrylic though that it's securely luting the 2 segments together, or all the segments together. The last thing you want is to not apply enough acrylic or not apply enough pattern resin, and then your little GC pattern bridge is flexible, or it's not really secured to the adjacent one. Here you see that my assistant puts a little plastic barrier over the hole in that tray, so that way the impression material doesn't just like goop down and get all over the place. And while she's filling up the tray, I use light body and I express it on the facial side around the jig, and also on the lingual side. You want to make sure you get the lingual too, because otherwise you'll get some gaps back there. So before I did this, I dried. I used the air water syringe to dry off around the implants first. Now I'll go ahead and take off this plastic barrier, and patient's got a small mouth, so I just kind of maneuver it in there, and then I wipe off all this excess PVS. And you see how some is stuck inside the access hole? That's okay. I actually just like make sure I find each implant site, and then I let it set up, and then just pluck it out with the Explorer. Super easy to pluck out. Sometimes, actually though, you do get little pieces stuck in there, and then I'll use a perio probe to kind of work it towards the surface and pluck it out too. So this is my final impression. This is with the verification jig all luted together, and that's ready to go. Alright guys, so we finished taking our final impression. So the next step is that I send that off to the lab and they send me back a wax rim. So it's going to be a poured up model with the implants in place and a wax rim, so I can take occlusal records next time. So for this procedure you can use a stock tray, a custom tray. You can even use a tray called a Mira tray. So a Mira tray is a little plastic tray that's got the little plastic barrier on top of it. It's already like built into it, and so that makes these impressions really convenient.